Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our reaction and review for Fargo Season 5, Episode 8. We are inching ever closer to the big, epic, monumental, insert adjective here finale. And with that, of course, are a number of big questions. But
hmm
from the get go here, we just have to ask about Gator. To all of you out there, could Gator actually save Dot? Is it wrong to have any hope whatsoever that Gator will save Dot?
I really hope that he will. And I feel like there's a little bit of hope after this episode. The episode last time, there was a little bit of hope there as well. I mean, we saw that Dot and Gator, they did rely on each other during that time with Roy. And this episode, they had some tough conversations. And even though Gator walked out being like, nah, we saw that that's not the case. I mean, he's really in his head.
Gator is basically a broken up teenager, and I know he's not
hmm
really a teenager, but
hmm
mentally,
hmm
he's still in that place where he's got the worst father possibly of all time, who is just, convincing him to go down this incredibly dark road. And
hmm
I have struggled a lot with the idea of how do I describe what I want for Gator, because I'm thoroughly fascinated by him as a character. I think Joe Keery's killing this role, but there's a difference between redemption and doing the right thing. And
hmm
I don't want to sit here and be like the Gator full redemption story is coming, because I don't know if that's going to be the case. This is a dude who's done a lot of bad things, including kill somebody.
I don't think there's enough time, honestly.
Yeah, I think this is more about, at this point, can Gator do the right thing
hmm
here? And maybe that can set him on a positive road, but he also has a lot to be accountable for. So it's just one of these sort of things where you can have one step forward, but there's still a lot of things that are coming. As Wint said, those consequences, they come and they're pretty darn close.
They are, but I mean, Gator is a young guy and he did grow up with really only Roy. Like,
Yeah.
he was really the only adult figure in his life. I mean, there's a reason why he is where he is, but he did have a relationship with Dot for those few years. They were together with everything that was happening to Linda. They do have a bond.
Okay, so Gator, I have a message for you now. And I know you're watching. Actually, I'm not gonna. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole trying to figure out what Gator's search history is. That
No.
seems like a very dangerous recipe. But no, we want you guys to stick with us here on YouTube all year long. Happy New Year to everybody out there, and hit that subscribe button, because you know what? We still have a lot more to go on Fargo.
Mhm.
And January is shaping up to be a month full of great murder mysteries, awesome things.
Yeah, speaking of all the murder mystery that's coming up, yeah, if you're a Fargo fan, I mean, there's Monsieur Spade coming
Yeah.
up, which is all about Sam Spade. For those of you who watch The Maltese Falcon, there's Criminal Record coming up, there's True Detective coming up, there's Death and Other Details coming
Yep.
up. So hit that subscribe button. Also, we have live streams every single
Mhm.
week on Fargo over at our Patreon, and I'll have a link for you below for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Fargo. This episode was brought to you by the letter G, as in David Foley was such a G coming out of that debate, strolling like that, popping the collar, getting in his Porsche. Look at all those Roys. Man, I was so excited. And then I kind of knew what was coming from my man Dave Foley when we had that little exchange with Wit and Danish at the gas station when he pulled out the phone to call Lorraine and didn't. I was like, oh no, oh no, you're not a G no more.
I I was very worried for your emotional state coming
I
out of this
know.
episode, being that you are the preeminent Dave Foley fan. And from the moment that this episode began with just like the montage of him, I was thinking, oh, this is like the Survivor episode where the person who hasn't been on screen is suddenly getting a lot of airtime. That person's going to be voted out tonight. I was like, oh no, Danish is leaving the island tonight, folks. But I got to say, great episode for him to go out on.
Yeah.
entire exchange of getting these people their new identities, really, really funny. I appreciate if you're going to have Dave Foley on your show, you got to lean in to the comedic sensibility a little bit here, right?
Oh, he's so funny. I mean, I grew up with Kids in the Hall. I'm
Mhm.
Canadian. I absolutely loved all of them. But yeah, Dave Foley's just so funny. You can't have him on your show and not lean into his comedic timing on things. It's just, why wouldn't you? But yeah, having him bring in all these Roys, have them all change their name. They're all wearing the cowboy
Yeah.
hat, watching him get so frustrated. I mean, it ended up really working out really well. By the time we actually got to everything that was going on, he turned around, he slugged that reporter,
Yeah.
everything that was going on, this is terrible, but like, I was like laughing at watching all the Roys play the parrot game with him to the point that he's slugging people and they're still mirroring him. I was dying.
It was really
It
funny.
was so funny.
If that makes us bad, who cares? Because it was hilarious. The entire thing was hilarious. Now, I will say this, and this, this may be controversial. I don't know, but if it wasn't for him slugging that reporter, like you mentioned,
Hmm.
I actually think he would have gotten away with this. It was embarrassing,
Hmm.
and it was something that was really entertaining to watch. But I feel like a lot of these people who are into this particular world and this election, I think they would still, even after this, be like, you know what, that was embarrassing for him, but I'll still I prefer him to the alternative. I'll give him my vote. Lorraine and
Yeah.
Danish got a little bit lucky.
She got absolutely lucky. Danish got absolutely lucky that that happened because it was a total accident
Yeah.
because he was turning around to punch somebody else. So it really would have just been something he would have been able to play off as like, oh, someone was playing a prank on me. Ha ha ha. Okay, let's move it along. It wouldn't have done enough damage. I was actually kind of surprised that this is where they went with it. I was
Mhm.
kind of wondering if they were going to like have a bunch of Roys, different Roys on the ballot, and people wouldn't know who they're voting for, and it would siphon away all his votes. And all of a sudden, it's, Roy Tillman C over here is now the new sheriff, that sort of thing. But I truly didn't expect this. And it was so funny, which was nice to have considering how dark of a turn this episode took.
Yeah, this was a very good way to start everything off. And you know what? Sometimes I'm okay with being wrong if the end result is funnier. Like, I still like my idea of, okay, all three of these people are going to be named like Bob, and it's going to be an opposition candidate, and they're going to all run around and cover like 3 times the real estate, and they can all just like campaign for one person. But
Yeah, and I mean, I think your idea would have been more solid for them. At least then they would have had a better chance. Like you said, complete accident,
yeah,
and they got lucky on that.
this was way funnier than my idea, though. I will give them credit for that. But yeah, you already said it, but this was the most intense episode, I think, of the season once we got to the spot where we were dealing with Dot and Roy.
That walk is the walk of an Emmy winner.
Yeah.
Watching John Hamm as Roy taking that long walk to that rendition of Toxic by Britney Spears. Man, the music this season
Mhm.
is 10 out of 10. It's been so good, beautiful.
Yeah.
I absolutely love every minute of it. And that song perfectly fit with him saying nothing. That walk felt long, like in
Yeah.
all the worst ways, like terrifying. It was done so well. Like, I just felt sick to my stomach
Yeah.
every single step he took.
They lingered on it for a really long time, and they also showed
I'm getting
everything.
chills
I know
talking about like it was so terrifying.
and it's so tricky because like everything I've seen from Hamm in real life, he's a very affable, funny, lighthearted guy, and he plays these characters that are so dark and intense in this entire sequence because we see obviously the humiliation that happens during the debate stage, and then you see the car ride back where he's having a hard time, juggling his family because he's used to being like this head of an empire, and his head is inflated to the point where it's out of the car, and there's just like this confusion and this manic energy that he doesn't know how to process, and there's just this rage that is building up. And we know what happened in that scene with Dot and Roy. I'm glad we didn't actually see it. I think they played that the right way because it's like this show is very, very dark, but it has to find a little bit of a balance. Like, this is something that I know Noah Hawley has said in interviews, that you can't swing all the way in one direction, because then if you do, you can't play any of the funny stuff anymore. And it becomes a really tricky thing to manage. But even though we don't see that particular moment, we see a lot of the aftermath of it. And, John Hamm gets his Emmy for just that walk up. Juno gets her Emmy for the choreography of this scene. I cannot even imagine what it was like to shoot this, where Dot is just like trying to escape and attacking him and doing whatever she can. And, John Hamm's a pretty big guy, and that makes it all the more imposing and difficult.
He's a really big guy and she is really small. And that scene with the chain just like on the floor, the thud of that,
Yeah.
it was, listen, they've done a good job in the show of not showing us every single thing. The
Mhm.
puppet show, I don't know if the puppet show was actually used with actors, I don't know how well I would have gone into the final episodes of this. And then if they had shown us what happened at the cabin the first time, where we just heard some of it, and then we saw the after effects of the next fight that happened, like it would have just been like too much for me to be watching. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way, that they've handled it in a way that makes it that we know what's going on, but it's
Mhm.
not so much that we can't watch a show anymore.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to balance, but they need to show obviously how terrible Roy Tillman is, because it's so important for us being able to want to root for her. And it's very important for Lorraine wanting to eventually be on her side when she understands everything that's going on. And we are building, I think, to this point where there is going to be this united front of sorts behind Dot. But the problem is just that it's all so, so difficult, because she's on Roy's property. Roy is going to try to stand on ceremony with
Mhm.
his, we were legally married, blah, 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 further nonsense. He's going to try to like strip whatever power she potentially has away from her. And he's got a lot of dangerous people who have a lot of dangerous things that they can use for whoever comes their way. Like, this is a really horrible situation.
Yeah, that's why I think it was really, as much as I didn't like watching Danish go, because you
Yeah.
guys know I love Dave Foley, I think it was really important to see that, because we saw Whit come up to the property because he had tried to help her when she was getting discharged from the hospital by Roy, to be like, you don't have to go with him. Like, I can have people here in 10 minutes. And she's like, just tell Wayne I'll be home soon, like sort of working it out. But seeing Whit come up to the property and Gator being like, that's it, this is as
Yeah.
far as you're coming. Seeing Danish come onto the property, dead under the windmill, which we'll also talk about, because we know
Yeah.
that Linda is there as well. And it all started to come together for her that Linda is actually dead. But so many people have like tried to come to the property now. One is dead, one got pushed away. It's like, okay, Lorraine and Indira are together now to kind of be like, okay, we're going to try to do something. But it's like everybody that's gone there is not able to get past the wall. But Gator's already past the wall. And that's where we get into this conversation that she had with him, where she first started to try to have the conversation of like, hey, we're both younger, whatever. And hey, I know your mom is alive,
Mhm.
which is something that I think neither of them really knew for sure. I truly think that Roy told both of them, hey, Linda left, that she's gone. He's obviously not going to be like, oh, she's dead, because he killed her and she's under the windmill. But I think that he told them both that she's left
Mhm.
and this is the new life. And they were like, okay, I guess this is the new life because we're children and we don't know what to do. So that moment where she was like, I'll offer something. Hey, I know your mom's alive and I know where we can find her if you help me. There was kind of that moment that you could see in his eyes where it was like, there's another road, and that road isn't Roy. Maybe, but it didn't work enough. So then she got into his head with the next road to kind of be like, "Hey, you ever wonder why you're not named Roy? You're fifth generation. Your name isn't Roy, and this is why he doesn't believe in you enough." To sort of be like, "Hey, I got your real mom over here. Also, your dad is really awful, and this is why." And it totally worked. It got into his head. So now it's just like, can he put it together in a way where he decides to actually help Dot? And even though Dot's not going to be able to offer up Linda, because Linda is dead, she now can offer up what happened to Linda, that Linda is dead.
I'm glad you went in this direction, because this is a scene that I find like incredibly fascinating, this Dot Gator conversation. Like there's so much to sort of piece through here, because while I was watching the first part of this conversation when she's talking to Gator about Linda, like I actually watched this twice because she says it with so much conviction. And I really did sit here wondering, okay, how much does she believe this dream that she had? Like, did she actually feel on some level like all of this is real? And where I've kind of landed with it is that I think in her head, she has convinced herself that everything that she dreamed was either real or as close to real as humanly possible, because she needs to believe that in order to get through every single day. She needs to believe that even though Linda left her and left Gator, that she's still somewhere out there. And I think she needed to believe that in order to make Gator believe that on a certain level. And I think there is a part of her that is, of course, full on survival instinct. I will do whatever I have to do in order to get back to Wayne, to get back to Scotty, to get back to my family. Like she has a lot of these like little, wholesome things that she even mentioned in the conversation with Roy that she wants to be there for Scotty for. But all of that is like this big collective. But I do think on some level she cares about Gator, and I think she has that experience with him, and I don't think she's like deliberately trying to lie to him, but I think she is. I need to say and do whatever I need to say and do. And the same goes for that other part you mentioned about why his name is Gator. Like, I believe that she's telling the truth there. I believe that that story probably did happen, but she has waited for a very convenient moment in order to share these things. And she also knows this is my only hope for survival. This is all I got for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, she may have thought she would never tell him that because it's just hurtful, right? So what's the point? And, Gator was so young. Like, was he like 10, 11? Like, he was a kid. I mean, she was a kid too,
Mhm.
right? And she hasn't really run into him since, right? So she
Mhm.
hasn't really had a reason to tell him something like that. But I think tinfoil hat,
Yeah.
she truly believed Roy when Roy said that Linda left. I think she really actually believed it to be true,
Mhm.
because believing the alternative, which is that Linda is dead, means that she's dead. She's going to die. And I think that's just was too much for her to process. So for her instead, I think her to be able to survive, she had to be like, you know what? Linda left.
Yeah, like this whole season, as entertaining and crazy as it may be at times, like it's a real study of trauma, and it's a real study of like how people process what has happened to them. And Gator is this guy where a lot of these people who were formative in his life, they're all gone. Dot ended up going, Linda ended up going. He's the constant in his life is Roy. And that is, I can't even speak to how bad that is. Like, it is the worst upon the worst. And this is why he's ended up here. But here's, I'll keep the tinfoil hat on for this. Is that
Okay.
I think that, I think we both think that ultimately the demise of Roy is coming. You have made it very clear what you want to see happen with a certain piece of jewelry.
Pull out those piercings, Dot.
I feel like she's gonna do that. I think somebody's gonna kill Roy, and I think in order for it to be satisfying, it either has to be Dot or it has to be Gator. And the only way that I would be okay with it being Gator instead is if Gator does it, and then ultimately Gator confesses to everything else that he does, and then Gator ends up being arrested at the end of all of this. Because I want Gator to do the right thing, but I also do not want Gator to like go off here scot-free for everything else that he has done.
I will not be satisfied if it's Gator. And I'm not saying that Gator doesn't deserve, some sort of, his own pound of flesh, but this is Dot's story, and this is Dot fighting her monster. And I feel like for me, it has to be Dot. I don't want to see Lorraine coming in and helping and doing everything, or Indira or Wit or Gator. It has to be Dot and Munch. I don't want to see Munch doing it either. I'm worried for our boy Gator here, because watching him be in the back of the car, I was like, oh no. I don't expect there to be any real redemption for Gator. Like I said, I don't think there's enough episodes, but I do think he can do the right thing. But he can't if Munch is rolling around in the car.
Munch, I okay, Munch is my least favorite part of the season right now, especially this episode, because it's just like I was so in to everything else that's going on here. And it's not the fact that he's 500 years old or whatever other supernatural
No.
stuff. It just feels like he's kind of additive to a soup that doesn't need that extra ingredient. It's just like sometimes you can sort of cut things down a little bit. Like, sure, maybe Munch finds a way to help save the day here for Dot for whatever reason, but
I don't need him.
yeah, like I just don't. I would rather, if somebody else is going to help Dot at this point, I would rather it be somebody like Gator or somebody like Wit, who I really, really like. Like,
Yeah.
I love Lamorne Morris. I'm so glad he got this episode because it's like finally Wit's doing some proactive things. And at the very least, Indira knowing at least some of what she knows was very key to Lorraine really finding out anything at the end of this episode.
Yeah, I think Munch needed to not be in this at all. It felt like he was put in because it's Fargo and they wanted something wacky to happen in this, and that without him, then that doesn't happen, right? But he just is like, you have everybody else in the story over here, and then you have Munch over here with kind of nothing to do. I mean, he was paid off. He's living in this old lady's house. Like everything that's happened now, yeah, now there's a problem because Gator made a problem. But that didn't need to happen at all. This is like a storyline that truly didn't need to happen. They could have had Gator really fighting with Wit and having that back and forth all
Mhm.
season, which is what I was really hoping for.
Yeah,
After seeing them in the evidence locker room, I was like, oh, this could be really good this season.
it could. And, they have a good back and forth in the multiple times that we've seen them now. Like, continuing that would be really, really good. But yeah, we didn't really need the Munch story. I will say I am very satisfied that this episode also brings us the end, hopefully, of Indira's crummy husband, where just bye. I'm not upset that this story was there because I enjoyed the moment of seeing Indira be like, screw you, get out. I'm gonna move forward. I'm gonna end up going over here to Lorraine. I'm proud of her. This
Yeah.
guy's a total loser. He can go away to Loserville and practice golf in his garage, and we never need to see him again.
Okay, I'm going to put my hard hat on. I think that
Yep.
this husband didn't need to be here at all. He didn't add, to me, anything to this story. He felt kind of unbelievable that Indira would be with somebody quite like that. I mean, I know that people end up in situations where it's like, well, they weren't like that when we were first together, sort of thing. And there was like charm and romance, and I'm swept away. But now she's at a point that it's like she's in so much debt. He's said these things to her. It was just like having him then, she comes home to change her shirt or whatever, and there's another woman there. It's just like, how much of this storyline do I really need? Like, we could have gotten her to the point that she would leave her job to go work with Lorraine without the husband. And that's sort of where I am with it, where I was just like, this husband feels like a caricature. And I'm not saying that people like that don't exist, because they do. But he felt like he was a caricature more than an actual character.
I will say I wish there was a minute or two more of Wayne in this episode, just because like I want Wayne to be somewhat proactive
Mhm.
and a little bit, because he does love Dot, and I liked hearing Dot talk about how great he is and like how he does love her and take care of her. My I gotta just mention briefly here, John Hamm in the final minute of this episode, after he's taken out Danish, he says a line, and I'm going to butcher it, so apologies in advance to Noah and John and everyone associated with Fargo, but he's basically just like, what are you gonna do when you're dead? And it was, if this was like a 50% as good of an actor as Ham was, this would have been the worst line of all time. Like, it was so ridiculous and so like, okay, come on. But because it was Ham that said it, and because it was this guy, of course this guy's gonna say this. Of course this guy's gonna say the stupidest thing ever because he legitimately thinks he's that cool. Okay, so Ham says the line, Danish is gone. Danish is now going under the windmill, which we know has a lot of significance on this show, so he's there. Linda's now there.
Mhm.
Where are we going to go from here? Like, this is, you would think that eventually somebody's going to discover these bodies, and obviously Lorraine's going to know that Danish is not around anymore.
Yeah, but unless somebody finds those bodies, I mean, Danish, You should have just told somebody you were going there. I mean, I feel like Linda's going to be discovered. Danish will be discovered. I mean, we watched Dot watch what was happening where they pulled everything back and threw the body in. So once she saw the windmill, it all came back to her of, her dream and everything that happened. She really realized, uh-oh, I'm in a really bad situation. I mean, Roy also mentioned, yeah, you want to be like Linda where you escape? Sure, I'll bury you right next to her. I think she really realizes that the lie of Linda being, off, she left sort of thing is like total lie. And she is really going to die if she doesn't find a way out of this.
This is her absolute low point, and this is sort of the point in the story where we all have to sit back and be like, okay, what can really be done here? But there are still 2 episodes. I think we both believe that there is a reason still to be hopeful. I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm excited to see how it's going to happen. Are we going to have like a night infiltration where they all try to like go into the property at different times?
Listen, there's a whole lot of people coming to this property now. I mean, Whit will be coming back with his consequences. Lorraine will be there. We got Indira there. I mean, and Lorraine has her whole security team. I
Yeah.
mean, they could all be headed there. This could be like a huge shootout at the old corral.
Come on, Fargo. You got to stick the landing. This season has been so unbelievably good. It's like the best season since the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
So let's make this happen. Also, hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss anything else we have coming your way on Fargo Season 5. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you to our patrons for your support. And we'll see you guys here next time.